Essentially, it forbids students from, if you like, as it was before, students being enrolled in online courses with foreign universities, unless they have a good reason. So the Education Ministry has come out and said, look, if you can't get a flight, if you can't get a visa and you can prove this, then we'll let you finish your online degree. But there's certainly to be no new enrolments in online courses with foreign universities. And that kind of reinstates the status quo.
Well, the decision was pretty abrupt. What do you think is behind it?
Look, there's been a lot of speculation. You never know with the Education Ministry. It's one of China's more bizarre ministries in terms of they come out with so much stuff. I think it's largely about signalling to the world that China is open and that things are back to normal. There could be an element of the students have been a bit naughty of late, shall we say, and having more of them abroad rather than domestic will be good, with the two meetings coming up in March, which will see the Communist Party announce its victory over COVID again, and they don't want anyone around to spoil that party. But I think it's largely about saying to the world, we're back to normal, and please, can we be friends again?
I'm trying to understand the logic here. Why is Beijing happy for students to go abroad to study? Tell us more about those reasons, but not study from international universities online at home.
Yeah, I mean, there's a contradiction there, but the contradiction is simply about internal messaging and external messaging. So externally, they want to say to the world, everything's back to normal. Look, our students are coming to your country to study degrees. But internally, they're a little bit freaked out about what had happened during the pandemic. Because to study online, you've got to use a VPN, and you've got basically material coming into China on the internet that you're not able to fully control. And this party is all about control in an internal sense. So that, I think, is where the contradiction lies.
Right, that makes a lot of sense there. How many students does this potentially affect in China, and what are the implications for them?
Look, it affects a huge number of students. The numbers I've seen just for Australia, around about 50,000 who are sort of in a tricky limbo type status. And when you consider the barriers that they face, trying to find accommodation, can you imagine trying to find accommodation in Sydney or Canberra in the space of a couple of weeks? The rental markets are pretty well at zero vacancy. How on earth are you going to manage that? There's going to be a lot of exorbitant rents being charged.
Well, officials here are working with universities to address these logistical issues, which they say will just be short term.
Yeah, it's hard to see. I mean, you look at a university like Sydney University, where before the pandemic, 1 in 4 of its students were from mainland China. Like, that's a huge percentage of the student body. And most universities, including my own, were looking to transition back to fully face-to-face in semester 2. But even we're not fully geared up in semester 1 to move entirely back to in-person teaching. So in some ways, it feels rushed, both from the Chinese students' point of view, but also from the university's point of view.
But overall, Australia is welcoming these students back to face-to-face learning.
Look, we're delighted. I think it'll really be great for campuses. It's our largest services export. I mean, it's worth $40 billion, 13 billion of that direct to the universities, and all the other spin-off benefits to the rest of the community. So, it's a huge export market for us that had been closed down for 3 years.
Meanwhile, Graeme, there are other crackdowns by the Ministry of Education, one being the ongoing attempts to stamp out private tutoring.
Yeah, no, that's another curious one. They thought they'd fixed it. So it's one of those great problems where they just declare something illegal and think it will go away. Now, of course, amongst Chinese parents, the demand for often their only child to receive the best education possible, the demand for this doesn't go away. And we think of China as a very tightly controlled society, but a lot of wealthy people live in these gated communities pretty well, out of reach of the police. And so if they choose to organise private tutoring within their compounds, it's very, very hard for the authorities to crack down and find out. So now they've relaunched the campaign, if you like, to wipe it out entirely. But, if you're wealthy, you'll find a way to get your kid the best education. It's universal everywhere.
Indeed. Graeme Smith, great to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.